All right, we're here with market leaders, five rock stars and one commentator. And so appreciate all y'all coming around today. We were just touching base on financing. At the end of this, we'll dive into a couple different dialogues. I'd like to just give everybody an opportunity to speak to their own personal markets and kind of where things are going and how things are trending for you and your companies, and you as individual producers as well. This time I'm gonna lead the charge on statements. We are technically 10% up on revenue year over year. That I was really excited when I saw that, except we were 50% up in the first quarter. So if you look at our actual revenue trending, we're anticipating to probably be flat across the year for gross and net revenues to our company. Which I'm quite candidly grateful for, that we're not really getting our legs cut out. But we have, just finished a conversation with one of our top producers, and they were trending for a deal a week. And they have done 3 to 5 deals in the last 4 months now. And so substantial overall slowdown. We are sending a commission back on a paid lease for a retailer. That is now being based off of having a termination. So that's we've done that in 9 years. We've done that 3 times, and 2 of them will occur this year. Some different elements around the retail piece. I then busted his chops a little bit and said, "So you're not going to produce what we have projected for the year?" He goes, "Whoa, whoa, whoa! I didn't say that." And we're such emotional creatures as producers, I think, and he's gotten his butt handed to him a couple times, and yet he forgets the number of transactions or the size of the deals. So I just walked in here and told him 2021 we will be 30% above 2020 is my bet, and I'll bet real money on that. And there's a bunch of reasons on that one that are outside of it, but I think we're seeing devastation with about 25% of our clients. 75% of our clients we're probably seeing 25% that are killing it, and 50% that are finding a way to survive and aren't sure what's going to happen tomorrow. So still a lot of lack of predictability, but we're probably going to pick up permits on the point. So we're going to be about 55 to 60% leased on that. And we're going to hit go. And some of those leases are a little funky, but we're going to have a big capital investment that we believe in. And so we're trusting and believing in the retail market with some real dollars and cents that we're putting into it. And so I'm optimistic. Gary, I know you got to go a little earlier. I'm going to let you go next.
Well, generally, thank you, Dan. Our business is trending along well. We're not probably going to break any all-time records, but we're very comfortable with our revenue year to date and our projections. On our property management side, we're still collecting well over 95% of the rents due, and we're signing a lot of leases. I would say our leasing activity in every facet of the business has been extremely active. Obviously, office and industrial are more active, but retail, we're finding an interesting dichotomy. We're seeing that the old concepts are not making it, and those old consumption delivery models are just not going to continue to work. But we're seeing a new wave of new creative delivery models that blend the bricks and mortar with online, with last mile delivery, with curbside pickup, and all these other creative blends that businesses are innovating towards that seem to work. The other part that we're talking to our tenants and our buyers and our buyers about is the expense side of their businesses. And they have told us over and over how aggressively they've been able to cut costs because of COVID and some of the natural places you see cost savings related to that. In terms of our brokerage business, We continue to have a very, very solid pipeline of new inquiries from within the market and from externally outside the market. We have had about 5 pre-COVID deals that sat on ice during the COVID start to rekindle. And they're measurable deals, and they're in the office and industrial. So I feel cautiously optimistic. I think generally speaking, businesses have responded well to the government's bailouts of, PPP and everything else. And I also believe that the markets in general and the psychology of the markets have looked past COVID now with a vaccine within sight, maybe by the end of the year, maybe not. But certainly they have looked past that, and it's now responding to the accelerated rate of growth that we've seen during this pandemic. And so I see blue skies like you do, Dan, in the fourth quarter of 20 and 2021 and 2022.
Good. That's good. Randy Mercer.
Thanks, Dan. Thanks, Gary. I'll echo a lot of Gary's comments. I am absolutely impressed with the increased velocity in the last 14 days. We have had significant showings every day in every sector, and multiple showings in the same buildings in the same day. Coming from Collier County, some migration from Collier up to Lee, price sensitive tenants who are frankly hitting their head on the price ceiling, and we're going to take advantage of that. The collection process has not changed very much. Office industrial, just about 100% on time or early. We are very grateful for electronic rent payments, and we're starting to head that way with just about everybody. That way no one can say their check is lost in the mail. It seems to be a very effective tool for landlords these days. Some new marketing efforts that I'm testing just to drag tenants out of the gopher hole. But I think it's going to be a good fourth quarter. I think next year is going to be fine. Agree with Gary. People seem to be looking past this on a 5 to 6 month basis with some level of confidence that there is going to be improvement. I don't think we're going to see a heck of a lot of improvement between now and the end of the year, but the velocity is starting to pick up. I would be, I'm not a betting man necessarily, but I think the day after the presidential election, a whole lot of things may change one way or the other. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out. Also, a lot of out-of-state people that are dipping their toe in the water. The residential market is going pretty fast. Fort Myers is smoking. Sanibel is almost sold out of inventory. Prices are going up. They've had a great summer on Sanibel. So I think all of that is going to put money in the coffers of the retailers and certainly the residential brokers. And commercial being a trailing market, 18 to 24 months, I think we're going to have a pretty good time here coming up in the near future.
That's awesome. Thanks, Randy. Appreciate that. Dan Miller?
I could mirror many of the sentiments, yet I would amend it as follows. Somewhere just after the 4th of July, my call activity went from a very quiet, in fact, totally silent June to a very, very busy July. That's continued. I'm just as Gary, seeing a large local inquiry level that are quality players. Some I haven't spoken with in many years have sought me out, but I'm also seeing players come in from outside of the market that I've never spoken with before. On an industrial leasing level, I'm seeing brokers from all over the country bringing prospects to the table. again, quality prospects. As to land deals, this looks like if the land contracts that I have on the desk today close as planned, I will be flat with last year's revenue. However, last year was a very good year. My crystal ball is a little less clear on 2021, but based on projecting this revenue forward, it looks like it could be a 30% increase as well. So I'd somewhat mirror that, but that's pure speculation on my part. Conclusion is, thank God June's behind us. Activity level is strong. Quality of prospects is exciting.
Awesome. Thanks, Dan. Dave.
Okay, I've got really 4 things I guess I'd really like to cover with you. One is medical. I'll talk a little bit about what's going on with residential down here in the Naples market, and projects, and then an opportunity. You know, each week I probably am reporting the same thing, that you know, we've got a limited market down here, so it's not too hard to focus on one commodity. And if there's any one commodity to focus on, it's medical. You know, the majority of the calls that we're getting, the majority of the activity that we're getting are somehow in some way medical related. Now, the Naples market again is dependent upon tourism, and the residential agents are just slammed with opportunities, and it's not going to come to any surprise from anybody. Most of these are from northern states, and with that comes the call that, as an example, we got yesterday, which ties these 2 in together, which is a residential referral with a doctor and his wife, both doctors in New York City. They bought a house down here last year, and they've made the decision that they are going to move their operations down here, starting with it's a cosmetic surgeon, so they're going to start with doing non-cosmetic surgery, and then gradually transition down to Naples, Florida with their business. So that saying of commercial follows residential, you know, I think everybody's going to be in great shape, as Randy and the others have said, with this transition of you know, residential people coming down to Florida. Yeah, the other, you know, as far as what's going on down here, again, in similarity to some of the other stories I've heard, some of the bigger, we're ahead of last year, and we're going to have a great year, but the bigger projects that we've been working on have slowed down, and they have continued to slow down. And I think it's just, they're monitoring what's going to happen with this election. They're monitoring, you know, for instance, you know, one of the political candidates, it won't take too much to figure out which one, is threatening to do away with 1031 tax deferred exchanges, that kind of thing. So there's a little bit of concern, and so people, if they can drag the feet, are dragging the feet. So we're experiencing that. And the last thing I want to share with you real quickly is I need help. I've got a very opportunistic.
You know, we know.
I'm not. You know, it's a very broad statement. Dan knows the whole story. Anyway, I've got a very opportunistic seller, and he has 7 properties down here. He wants to sell 6 very aggressive triple net properties, and it's really a recession-proof triple net retail operation that we're going to bring out to the market. And so the teaser is, give me a call or send me an email or something, and I'll get all this information out to you. But I will share with you, it's starting at a 5.5 cap, and they're all standalone buildings, and it's a small cap. They range in price from $800,000 to $1.3 million. So somebody wanted to pick them all up for $6 million. It'd be a good deal for everybody. And that's my report. So just remember the part about where I said I need help. Thank you.
That's not lost on us. Justin.
All right. Thanks for having me, Dan. Firstly, I'll talk kind of high level business wise. I think the biggest trend that we've identified here, a lot of it has to do with the long-term entitlement deals that we're working on. Much like all of us in, call it March, April, May, many of those hit the pause button since then. A lot of those deals that are 12, 18-month deals have now resumed, and not just resumed contract-wise, but spending money, going through the entitlement pre-app due diligence phase. So happy to see that, and that's good looks for quarter 1 and 2 2021. I think a lot of that's coming from what has already been touched on, which is residential permit activity. Happy to look at, we just finished up looking at market trends for our presentation next week, and it's interesting to see that, are we headed for a 16,000 residential permit year? Probably not. But when you look at the first half of this year so far, mostly because we had a huge first quarter right before COVID occurred, we're already close to 9,000 permits in the year in the Tri-County area, which is a nice halfway mark between what we were looking at last year. So hopefully that continues. Just like you said, obviously the commercial is a trailing indicator to that, but permit activity is remaining strong. A lot of that's in multifamily, but still seeing continued residential permit activity, builders getting aggressive, national home builders putting big projects under contract. So I think that there's a brighter outlook than there was a couple months ago, especially from the publicly traded national home builders on future dev deals. So that's been good here. One of the things that was interesting was, as far as our client base goes, a lot of them were posed in a good position to seek distressed assets, many of which didn't really occur. Like we talked about in previous installments, there wasn't any blood in the water, and there's a lot of people looking for blood in the water in distressed deals. One thing that we're keeping an eye on is what happens over the next couple months once a lot of the government assistance discontinues, just like Gary was talking about. Once a lot of that goes away, it'll be interesting to see if there's any opportunity in that arena as far as buyer representation on deals. We have been happy to see the positives as of late, and short-term deals coming together, long-term deals coming back together. It's been exciting. It looks like it's going to finish off as a pretty good 2020 for us, similar to what you guys said. I think it's probably going to be pretty close to last year. But 2021's looking a lot better just because we're having a spike back into long-term deals being put back together.
That's awesome. Thank you, Justin. Go ahead, Dan.
Justin, I have a quick question for you. What are you seeing as a current boots on the ground result of Trump's actions attempting to claw back the Corps' overreach? And that's my commentary, but Corps taking a very conservative approach, requiring an application to give you an NPR letter, or is there a boldness on the part of developers to interpret that and try and move forward?
There's a couple things right now. So the Army Corps issue has always been a problem, mostly driven to time and resources required to get an Army Corps permit. So that's created a little bit more hesitation, I would say, for properties encumbered by wetlands. The other issue that we're dealing with right now, especially along coastal areas, are the proposed revisions to FEMA flood maps. So we have two kind of major issues in that arena, all of which are coming from the federal government, which are causing pause for some, but also accelerating others. And, there's some that are viewing the FEMA flood map issue as, all right, well, it's going to take a couple years to get that adopted, so let's go right now and get our project going before we have to deal with this. On the Army Corps side, everybody's already been very hesitant to, go through that process, being that it's an 18, 24, 36-month process. But now they're looking at it even heavier just because of what you just mentioned, Dan.
Right. Thank you.
I got one other topic real quick, Dan, and then I'm going to sign off. We didn't really talk, no one did, about the rental market. Justin, you alluded to it in the multifamily business and all the permitting that's going on there and all the construction. From what I'm understanding, landlords in newer and a lot of residential rental communities are able to collect rents, but they're definitely not as much or as high, and they're kind of burying those right now because of the unemployment, extra unemployment checks that the bailout's providing. I see job creation strong, but I do see a gap building between what tenants can pay in the next few months and what they were paying, before the virus. Do you guys want to speak real quickly about where you see residential apartment development going in the next, say, 24 months? I'm not very optimistic, actually.
Well, I'll make a comment specifically to one deal that we're working on in the Cape. Our pro forma was showing 20 unit per month lease up, and we're at 32, with 85% of those being over 55. And so it's a substantially different demographic. I'll also share that Lee Health did a internal survey of the 627 people they've hired over the last 12 months. I believe that was the time frame. Well, maybe it might have been 24 months. They received back about 300 of those surveys. The number one issue was temporary housing, as people came in to find permanent housing. And with the reduced, I don't think debt has gotten more aggressive on a good framework for those with limited down payments. It's gotten harder, generally speaking, in this situation. So I see there being a couple offsetting components there, Gary, that I think we're going to have a dual approach where people are buying and moving regardless, and renting. So buying and renting, that's going to help. I think the BC properties are going to get some pressure, and they're going to deal with some of the heartache that others aren't, because the A properties are still got tremendous pressure to get leased by people that don't have jobs.
Keep in mind, we're not seeing any evictions right now because of the government mandates. We're not seeing any foreclosures right now because of the government mandates. I've already stated how optimistic I am, and I still am very optimistic. So don't misconstrue this to sound other than that. But I do believe that we've got to pay attention to what's happening there and manage around that. And because of that, I think that the rate of new multifamily projects, Class A residential communities coming out of the ground going forward, that market had already gotten very, very aggressive in terms of the pro formas that they were building. I think that we're going to see a slowdown there, but I'm okay with it because we don't want an overbuild in the multifamily rental community market. And with that, guys, have a great weekend. Thanks again for putting
Thanks,
this
Gary.
together.
Well, take care, Gary.
Hey, Gary.
Just a comment to follow up on that. Keep in mind, most of these merchant builders are developing with the construction loan and have no hopes of acquiring permanent financing. Their end game is a REIT. Without stabilization in time, and if there are incentives in the market that prevent them from finding that REIT player at a number that makes sense, they're in a real pickle. That history is repeated 3 times in the history of me and Fort Myers alone in this. So my suspicion is you can fast forward through Gary's question and come to that conclusion. Will we? History would say yes. Typically, that doesn't bode well for us.
Any other comments on that one?
Right.
I think from our standpoint, obviously there's still a lot of eyes from multifamily developers on our market. I think it's really clear what some of those submarkets of Lee and Collier are that should be avoided, but I still think there's opportunity outside some of those, call it, I don't want to use the word hotspot, but I will. Some of the places like Colonial Corridor, like near I-75, there's probably a bit too much product coming into that area, and that should be avoided if you were a residential multifamily developer. But there's still some pockets that I still think are viable for multifamily projects. Just like, Gary opened with and Dan mentioned, though, I think the more aggressive performas with ultra luxe apartment projects need to be relooked at and get them brought back down to a market perspective to be successful. We can't be expecting, $2 plus rents everywhere throughout Lee County.
Interesting. Justin, you're in this world, and it sounds like, Dan, you play in this world a little more than I do, but the couple home builders that we're working with, we have 4 ongoing transactions with either the super regional guy or the nationals, and all of them have committed that they're above their pre-COVID projections for the year. And one of them specifically had 0 sales in April. and they've come back. That one came back, and they are now double their pro forma for pre-COVID. So, this element of, I think we have unique metrics that are very difficult to put on charts that I don't know how to offset. Is if there's a flood of population, there is a grouping, and it appears like a short window of devastation almost. And I think there's going to be some real fear, and people may participate in some great options, but I think it's going to likely be a 90-day window where it looks like everything's flooding out because you've got foreclosures and evictions, and then they simply get replaced by the amount of demand that's in place. And I think pricing pressure is more my expectation. Is you just can't get that much juice out of every single deal. Like you're saying, Justin, the $2 rents are impossible for somebody who's making $25,000 a year. So the what was considered A properties, I think, are going to get pressed to BC rents, and that's where we're going to see the real hardship, is those long-term players who can't meet their debt ratios. That's where the distress could be, and landlord or the big Starwood Capitals of the world who put capital behind these things, I think they're going to have to make some hard decisions. Are we going to let the market catch back up over the next 3 to 5 years, or do we take assets back? And that's where those questions are. Much like you, Justin, I think the question that I'd love to hear perspective on is, I've had countless number of calls, is where's the deal? Where's the blood? Where's the opportunity? And we're ready to pounce. And there is a surprising amount of liquidity in the market still. And what is that going to do is, anytime there's a little glitch, it feels like, oh, somebody's going to snag it, which means we'll never get the blood. And I'm curious if you guys are seeing anybody who has real fear about the future, and which segments those are going to be.
If I knew where those sectors are, I think we'd have sales volume twice of last year. I think that's been the issue, is identifying those opportunities. And I think, it's tough to peg exactly why that hasn't occurred yet, outside of loan forbearance and some of those government programs we were talking about. I think part of it also has to do with lessons learned from the past. I think, especially right here in Southwest Florida, we were rocked in 2008 timeframe, and I think that, although people are quick to forget a lot of things, I think that's one that not everybody was too quick to forget about. And I think people have poised themselves a little better to fare better in situations like this, and that has to have something to do with it. Given that there was a lot of buys during that time, folks have also had a lot of time to pay down debt attributed to those assets if they haven't already sold them since then. So there's a lot of things that are keeping that from happening. But it'll be interesting to see over the next couple months whether, some of these programs, when they discontinue, will reveal some opportunities for buyers like that. And Dan, I got to apologize. I got to jump off here. Thanks for your time, everybody, guys.
Hi, Justin.
Hey, Justin.
Guys, we started some of the conversation off with regards to debt. And we referenced a few banks that are doing deals. I think the market would benefit from some of that discussion. Anyone who want to speak to a deal that they've done with a local bank versus maybe a national or a super national type of player that's allowed your clients to be able to move forward with deals?
I still prefer
data to share.
I still prefer the regionals or the soon to be community banks. Cogent Bank has come into the market. A lot of Iberia people have transitioned over to that. Since their merger, they're going to be very aggressive. Sandcap, their name keeps coming up from everyone. They seem to be doing a great job. I've gone out to a few lenders on a couple things this week, and I'm not sure they want to do business, although they profess that they do. I guess we'll see when we get term sheets. When we get through the lender issues, I've got a construction question just to get some feedback from some of you other guys.
Yeah, I will just say personally, I've shifted within the community bank world, Edison Bank seems aggressive. Their lending limits are somewhat restrictive on how far they can go. And so that's likely to play into what we're doing in the city of Fort Myers. They're aggressive at wanting to see their community improved, which I just was really impressed with Greg Blurton's comments and their engagement on some deals that we're working on. Sanibel in the same way, like you said, Randy, similar story, very active, very engaged in trying to find ways to put money to work in their community. A lot of it still comes down to sponsors. I mean, the sponsors are having to carry this, and I have quotes. I mean, just for the record, from some of those banks about waiving personal guarantees post construction. So there is some of that discussion, Dan. You were asking about that upon good stabilization with good credit tenants, at least releasing substantial amounts of personal guarantees. So I'm optimistic on that front. Randy, why don't you dive into construction?
Yeah, and this may be a question for Dan Miller just because of the product type. A client has owned a 10,000 square foot dock high warehouse for 20 years, perfect credit, perfect tenant, and some additional land, which he has been sniping at me as idle equity. So we've done our engineering to verify we can in fact double the size of the building. Same non-word docks, everything the same, just flipped, off-site water management, no problem. Taking it out to several builders. The first number I got back, while it wasn't a line item breakdown, was $85 to $100 a square foot, and that's with maybe a 1,500 square foot interior office. I about fell on the floor. Second number I got back was $65 to $70 a square foot. Now we're talking stem wall, we're talking metal, we're sprinkled, 20-foot clear height. Not a big project, and I understand there's no economies of scale.
How
But
much
the range
fill
from
do you think it
65 bucks
needs?
a foot to $100 a foot seems a little high to me.
How much fill dirt do you think it needs?
Literally none,
Okay.
because the stem wall will take care of it.
You're going to be north of 85 bucks a foot when you're done.
Okay.
Will you hit 100? I would say yes, most likely, but you have a good chance to be just under that $100 per square foot number.
That is absolutely painful.
There's no question. Those that I represent, and I can name many others, you and I wouldn't go compete for the cap rate that they're comfortable with because of construction costs. Rents have done well in progressing to a reasonable number given what costs should be. Costs have outpaced that. That's why you don't see the level of speculative development from self-made developers.
I mean, I'm reading where material costs have been dropping due to a lower demand. Everything I'm reading say the cost should come down, but I'm just not seeing that yet.
But from what I see of material costs, there were two factors in that. One, the decline has been less than 5%, 2 to 3%. Secondly, some of that was built in from an absence of supply because of the COVID shutdowns and the lack of ships coming to port. The latter has been somewhat rectified, but the amount of increase you saw when supply was low versus pricing after supply gets back to reasonable, if we're there or soon to be there, you're not seeing a clawback of that increase. It seems to be steady based on what I'm hearing locally. I'm not buying any materials on a grand basis, but what I hear that are TI costs specifically continue to increase. They're not decreasing. There was no lessening of labor costs nor any of the materials that go into finished product. Still climbs, still shocks the poop out of them.
Well, we don't want any of that.
Hey, Randy.
Yes.
Coincidentally, I was just on the phone with a builder who does a ton of the kind of product you're talking about. And I would invite you to give him a call. His costs are in excess of $100 a square foot. Steve Hubble. Give Steve a call.
Absolutely painful for $8 triple net rents.
Yes.
It's extraordinary.
Well, yeah.
Look, the good news is if he builds another 10,000 square feet, if he gets $8 and it costs him $100, he can probably get 6% money on it and get somebody to take him out of it. You just got to roll it into something else. Find the distress, Randy. It'll be perfect.
I'll also share that Steve is not, you know, if he's spending that kind of money, he's well in excess of $8 a square foot. He's going to be charging coming out of it. So,
Randy, is your build in Naples or in Fort Myers?
It's in the county. It would be a Billy Creek expansion.
Yeah. That's, I mean, we're doing some steel buildings in Fort Myers for nonprofit purposes only. And I was blown away about what it was going to cost. I thought we could get into it at a far different, just the vertical and just the metal was $35. And that was literally nothing else. No insulation, no plumbing, nothing. So just getting the metal was ridiculous. So I don't know how else to carve away at this stuff either.
You know, it may end up being a neighborhood park forever.
Oh, that's great. What else are you guys seeing? Any other topics you guys want to cover?
Just a quick touch. We've talked about some of the governmental programs that are out there now. I think we're starting to see a lot of the businesses that came into the PPP early starting to wind through those programs. I think that's still going to have some sort of a play in the third quarter because people realize that they'll be dealing with their own money rather than some free government money. I think we need to continue to monitor that very, very carefully on the tenant side.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I don't know about you guys, but July was a good month for vacations for me, but it was doubly a good month for everybody else that I came around. It seemed like the entire month of July and now into August was just vacation mode, which makes me a little bit nervous that they played through their PPP money and the elements of people that are in some tough situations. I'm very curious to see the effect this third quarter. I anticipate this to be a bit of a challenging month.
Well, I'm sure none of the four of us are driving Lamborghinis, so we're good to go.
I've been driving the same Kia for a very long time.
I can tell you that I was in North Carolina last week, went up for a week of biking and family. And at the end of this, I'll brag on my results. The attitudes there were very compliant with regard to masks and social distancing and good attitudes overall, but very observant of the CDC protocols. It was great to be there. It was a perfect time to be there. Those of you who follow me on Strava, though I don't think it's any of you, I only did about 100 miles, but I got almost 14,000 feet of elevation gain. And for us Flatlanders, very proud of that stat. So glad you recorded this.
Great job. Great job. Dave, any last comments that you'd like to make?
No, I'm good. I'm feeling very blessed that, hearing from you guys, getting caught up with you guys every 2 weeks. And I think everybody's very encouraged about what's going on down here. I think that we've got a great outlook for what's going on down here and just stay the course. And I would, for everybody, stay the course. Everything is going to be great. It really is.
I'm glad you feel like it's only been 2 weeks since we talked. It was a whole 3 and the time before was a month, but.
Oh my gosh. Oh. Well,
Randy, any last comments you'd like to make?
I told you I need help, Dan.
Yeah, I've developed a new standard answer when someone asks how I'm doing. I say, number one, I'm not crazy, or at least I don't think so. Number two, I'm very, very healthy because I've had time to go through all my summer annual physicals, so that's good. And number three, I'm not broke. So those three things seem to be what's guiding my attitude and keeping me optimistic.
That's awesome. Well, I'll leave on the note that I've talked to 2 or 3 employers that are simply hoping they don't renew the assistance program because they need employees and they can't get people to come to work.
There you go.
And so I was very encouraged by the demand side of this. This is just normal businesses. And so I'm optimistic that we'll see continued job growth. I also enjoy these times. We will meet the first week of September to have our next follow-up. And so I think August will be a telling time. We'll be in the hard press of politics. And so that might be a big topic for us to make some bets on if one or the other are elected. I got a $50 bet that it doesn't make a difference. Is the markets are going to not like it, and then they're going to go through the roof within 30 days. That's my opinion. So on that note and that lie, I'll leave you all and have a great weekend.
Dan, thank you.
Thanks, Danny.
As well.
Thank you.